Now we're ready to do step 5, the assembly of the Gamut 3. What we have to do is go back into the parts box, and in the bottom of the parts box, wrapped up in foam, we have a swiveling pulley, which I call a caster pulley. We want to install this on the machine in this position. So what I'm going to do first is try to get these screws loose, and that takes again a 9/16 wrench, 9/16 socket. I'm going to reach through, and 9/16 wrench, and I'll loosen this nut, and then I'll kind of shake out the bolt. There we go, there's a bolt. I have to do the same thing over here, reach through, access hole, get this nut off, and there it is. Oh, shake out the bolt. Okay, in order to install this, what we need to do is we need to be able to reach down inside there and very carefully put the bolt through this slot from the inside. And that's why we have this wonderful little pair of vice grips, miniature vice grips. And this was in the special tools that are supplied with the machine. We need to grab this bolt by the head. We need to adjust the vice grip so we get a good grip on it. There. I've got it by the head. I can now come and I can install this like that. Reach down inside there and install this. Theoretically, we could do this with our fingers and we could get very frustrated. So I've decided to supply you with a souvenir vice grip with the machine so that it makes it easy. We're going to come over here and we're going to push that down through the hole. I'm going to stick my finger in there to hold it in place, and then I'm going to take the vice grip out. I'm going to grab the screw, all the while holding the bolt in place with my finger. There. Then what we want to do, I'm going to take our 9/16 socket, put it back on the head of the bolt, and we want to tighten this nut up. Again, we're aiming here not to make the nut fully tight. We're just trying to tighten it up enough that it still allows adjustment. Now it's not quite there. There, that's okay. Now we can still slide this back and forth, but it's held in place. And now we need to repeat our experience with the vice grip. We're going to take the vice grip, grab the bolt, we're going to reach down inside here, push the bolt through, put the nut on, and there it is. The vice grip has had its starring role. It is now finished, and we can continue the assembly. Okay, there we go. So now, basically I can move this back and forth. Ultimately, we need to adjust this in position, but it's held in place now and it's movable. Now I need to go back over to the spiral pulley and the spiral pulley housing. What I need to do is take the cover, and we're going to have to take our temporary foam tool out, take the cover, kind of thread that on. Notice I'm keeping my finger on here because the cable just loves to go sprawling and come unwound and tangled, and we don't want it to do that. So I'm keeping my finger on here, I'm grabbing the cable, and I'm going to put some tension on it. Whoops. If you have somebody helping you, this goes easier, but you can do it yourself. Okay, I'm now pulled out maybe about 6 inches. I'm going to take this. This is what I call a parking brake. I'm going to loosen the handle. I'm going to put the cable in here, and I'm going to tighten this down. And boom. I now have the cable restrained. Got a loose end here. Don't need to make this very tight. We don't want to bend the cable permanently or damage it. We just want to kind of grab onto it. Now I can take the Phillips head screws and I can start them. One there. One there. Need to come down here. It helps to look at the hole and make sure that the slot is lined up so that you can get the screw started. There we go. 4. Now I need to get my Phillips screwdriver. Very good. So now we have the parking brake set. We have the cover screwed on. We have the cable kind of loose out here, but tight in here. We need to put the guide roller back on here. And the guide roller goes right here. And the guide roller essentially goes down over the chain. The guide roller is designed to keep the chain approximately centered on the machine as you row back and forth. So we'll put the guide roller on the top here, and it's going up slightly over the chain. Here's where we need a 1/2 inch socket. So I'll put a 1/2 inch socket here. Oh my goodness, there, come on, get started. Okay, now we can do something. Oops. Feel resistance there, I shouldn't. Let me try to see what we got here. I have it slightly crossed. This is something you have to be careful of. You want the chain to be in the middle of the groove. So let's pull this up. Come on. We need to go up, back it out a little farther. We want the chain there. Slide it over so that it's in the middle of the groove and run this down. So essentially if you feel resistance before you have the screws tightened down, you need to stop, as I did, and check, make sure the alignment is correct. Basically the idea is the chain is running in this groove, and this roller is providing guidance for the chain. Now I can take and grab this just to see, and sure enough, everything is free and the chain is running free inside this groove. Now our next step is to take the loose end of the cable and thread it through the pulleys. You'll notice that there's a hole right here, and the cable goes through the hole. Then we take the end and we run cable down the middle till it comes out. Now this is important that you check and make sure that the cable is actually in the pulley, in the groove of the pulley. Because if it isn't in the groove, it can jam and damage. Come out here, and we're going to run the cable around a pulley that's inside here. So I need to essentially push it through, and then I need to thread it. There's some little spindles here, and they're designed to retain the cable, and you have to make sure that the cable goes past the spindle and comes out. Okay, so having done that, I can see that this is very free. It's running on the cable. The cable is running on the pulley, and there's no problem. Now we go to the swing arm. Again, we have another pulley here. What I've discovered is that the easiest way to thread the cable on this pulley is to actually just push the little ball into the groove. And what you'll see here is the ball kind of sticks there, which is very handy. So I'll push the little ball into the groove, and then I'll just feed this around very carefully. And eventually, the ball should come out the other side. There it is. Okay. All right, so we don't have quite enough slack to do this. I've run out of travel. I need a little bit more free cable, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to loosen the parking brake. I'm going to pull this out. There we go. Now I've created a little more slack. Come back to our problem here. Let's try this again. Okay, so I need to take the little ball, stick it in the groove, run this around. And there it is. It comes right out, still stuck in the groove. Then you have to just kind of pry it loose. There. Now we have an end fitting here. This fitting is very similar to the fitting that is on the spiral pulley. You insert the cable, you swing down, and you pull, and the cable is engaged. Again, let's try to reverse that. Sometimes these are fairly tight. There we go. Okay, so the cable, the ball goes in. We swing the cable down through the groove, and we pull the ball tight. That's it. Now we need to go back to the parking brake. Loosen the parking brake, take the cable out, and very gently, we're going to let the cable slack get taken up. Now at this point, we need to make sure that the cable has in fact stayed on the pulleys. It should feel free. There should be no noise. There should be no drag. It should be just absolutely frictionless. Everything is working. Now at the beginning of the assembly sequence, we needed a small carpenter's square. Well, now we're going to use it. Let's take our 9/16 socket, our 9/16 wrench, our carpenter's square. What I want to do here is I would like this cable to go right up the center of the machine. I want the machine to think that I'm actually pulling on the chain, even though I'm pulling on the cable. And I want it to be centered on the machine just like the chain was centered on the machine. The reason we have this adjustable is because by the time you've welded and bolted all of these parts together, there is invariably some dimensional variation from one machine to the next, and so we have to compensate for all this dimensional change with this final assembly step. So I'm going to take this square, I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to read what it says, and it says basically 1 3/4. I'm going to flip it around, try the other side, and it basically says roughly 1 5/8, a little bit less. So I want to move this that way a little bit. Wait a second. No, I don't. I want to move it this way. So I'll move it this way about 1/16 of an inch. And let's see what we got here. Nope, needs to come more. Okay, now I'm about 1 11/16, and I go over here, and I'm about 1 5/8. Basically, if you can get this centered within about 1/16 of an inch, that's all that's required. This is not a critical dimension, but we'd like to basically get this approximately even centered on the center line of the machine so that it's where the chain originally would have pulled. So having set the distance, the next step I need to do is to come in here and tighten the bolts. There's one, and I'm going to reach down inside here. There's two. Now the reason that I'm not putting the socket down inside through the hole is because the cable is in the way, and it's easier to work around the cable by putting the wrench inside. So we come back and we tighten both of these. This should be fairly snug. For the final step on step 5, I'd like to take the erg and I'd like to very carefully go full stroke. Let's go back. Very carefully go full stroke. I'm keeping the pressure very light here because what I'm looking for is any sign that there's resistance, that something's hung up, or that something isn't quite right. If you do feel any resistance at this point, you need to troubleshoot. Make sure that the cable is indeed staying in the groove and it's winding properly on the spiral pulley. Make sure that the cable is indeed running in the pulley grooves at the end of the swing arm, at the end of the oar pin beam, and over here at the caster. So this feels good, and I think we've actually got everything strung through here correctly. So that ends step 5.